Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of MFO. Over the last several weeks, there have been a lot of stories in the media about celebrities that have contracted Lyme disease. Justin Timberlake ended a tour due to the fact that he was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And in our bass fishing community, Kyle Patrick just recently had to excuse himself for the remainder of the Bassmaster Elite Series tournaments due to his diagnosis of Lyme disease. Guys, in today's episode, we're going to talk about Lyme disease, where it came from, how it is contracted, and more importantly, what you should pay attention to with regards to this disease. Yes, there are some serious consequences, but if we pay attention and we know what to look for, the reality is it can be a pretty simple thing to take care of. Guys, let's talk about all of that when we come back. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. I'm not sure if you know this, but Lyme disease is relatively new. It was the late 1970s when two moms in Lyme, Connecticut, recognized that their kids were suffering from rheumatoid arthritis kind of symptoms and didn't know what that was coming from. And they actually commissioned a researcher to kind of do some more research and found out that, yep, their kids were playing outside in the summertime in tick-infested areas in the woods and in areas near the woods, and that this was a tick-borne disease. In fact, the bacteria that's transported by these ticks, Borrelia Burgdorfia, if I'm saying that right, were actually named from the researcher Willy Burgdorfer, who actually did the first research to find these spiral bacteria. So we've got our history lesson. Now let's find out what happened. So a tick is going to attach itself to a rodent type animal, whether it's a mouse, a rat, squirrel, any kind of rodent, and it's going to pick up this bacteria. And now if that tick attaches itself to another mammal, whether it be a deer or a human, it attaches itself at that point. And here's the interesting part. Just attaching itself doesn't mean that you're going to get this bacteria or this Lyme disease. What happens is the tick needs to actually attach itself and stay on the human for 24 hours or more before what happens is the tick actually, and this is kind of gross, but the tick regurgitates into the human. That's where, because what a tick is normally doing is drawing blood out of the mammal that it lands on. Well, if the tick has stayed on that source for over 24 hours, it now regurgitates back into that source. That's the first time that that bacteria can be introduced into that source. So if it lands on you and it's been on for more than 24 hours, anywhere between 24 and 36 hours, now you've got the chance that that tick is actually regurgitating back into you, and that's where that disease can actually be introduced into your body. Now, at that point, it takes several more days for that bacteria to start to interact with your body. And the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get that, you may have heard about this, that bullseye type rash. You may get that bullseye type rash. It doesn't happen all the time. But the other thing that might happen is you might experience some symptoms, flu-like symptoms, achiness, maybe some nausea, fatigue, just feeling kind of weak and things like that, joint pain, things like that. Guys, this is the time that you need to respond. If you've been out in the woods, if you've been in an area where, or you've found a tick on you, and within the next week, you start to feel some of these symptoms, this is the time that you need to see a doctor. This is quite honestly The reason that I'm doing this video is because with the VBT just happening and realizing so many guys are bank fishermen and they're going out and they're fishing from the bank. If you go out and fish from the bank, oh, I found a tick, I had to pick him off because he wasn't just crawling, I had to pick him off. And then several days later, you're feeling like, oh, maybe I got the flu. That is a time when you need to go into a doctor. Guys, we're notorious for not wanting to go see a doctor. I'm the same way. And it'll go away a lot of times. But that's the problem. What you're doing in that situation is you're taking acute Lyme disease, meaning short-term Lyme disease that could be cured with a simple trip to the doctor and a 10-day dose of antibiotics, something like doxycycline or amoxicillin. And boom, it could be taken care of and done. But if you don't do that, what could happen is you could get to more chronic Lyme disease, where now you're dealing with the body that's trying to fight off that bacteria, and it's causing possible neurological side effects, joint pains, severe arthritic pain, and things like that, which is much more difficult to get rid of and much more difficult to diagnose, because at the time you've got pretty specific symptoms. There was a tick, it was attached, I got a rash, I felt sick. Boom, you know you have it. 3 months down the road, a lot of that stuff is gone. So it's very, very important when you're outside to, number one, protect yourself, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But if you find a tick that is attached, if you find a tick that's just crawling on your body, you don't need to worry as much. But if you find a tick that's attached and you remove it, and then a short while later start to either see the rash or feel those symptoms, you need to get into a doctor and explain that combination of events. Let's talk about prevention real quick, guys. Long pants. And by the way, all of this is happening and it's more prevalent because it's been a very, very hot summer. And that is, it leads to a lot more ticks and the ticks being active, but it also is related to the fact that we're out and we're not wearing a lot of clothes because it's so gosh darn hot out. So we're wearing short pants and short sleeves and sandals and things like that. When you're outside, one of the ways to prevent this is to wear long pants, to wear socks, to make sure your pants are tucked in under your socks to prevent the ability for the ticks to crawl in at the ground level. Or use some type of an insecticide like DEET or picaridin, some sort of a bug repellent. Those aren't, to be honest, I don't feel like those are a big deterrent, but they help. And more importantly, just after you're in the woods, make sure that you're checking yourself. Do those tick checks. Make sure that you're, checking everywhere to make sure that you don't have ticks. Because remember, if it hasn't been on you for 24 hours, you're completely safe and there isn't an issue. So just check yourself after you've been out in the woods. And as long as that tick hasn't attached itself or hasn't attached itself for more than 24 hours, you don't have a problem there. So guys, these are just some things to pay attention to when it comes to Lyme disease. I'd love to hear your comments on this. I've had it. And again, I've had this when I was younger. I'm curious as to your experience with it. Guys, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you again tomorrow on another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.